So now I want to move on to, enterprises have data warehouses in place today. So what is driving the need to offload the data to a Google Cloud platform? And what new opportunities are presented by moving to the cloud? And if you don't mind, can we start with a short description about what we're referring to when we talk about offload? So Vladimir, I'll get you to start this question.
Sure, and I find this offload term is very wide, and in many cases it could be a bit confusing. So when we talk about offload, it can actually describe different stages in adapting cloud for data-specific application. So, and usually it's, again, from what we observe, the process starts from migrating data into the cloud. And the reason why I can just speculate that it's a cheap, probably the easiest and process with least risks involved is to move information into the cloud. And because of the price, it's much price and scalability of the storage, cloud storage solution specifically from Google, it's very easy to start putting information from an enterprise and external sources into what is called data lake, which can store this information indefinitely, and you can rely on it or use it down the road for processing, augmenting, and building aggregate roll-ups for any business requirements that you might have. And again, the reason for that is data storage is very cheap, as Chad had mentioned. It's 6 to 12 times cheaper than any similar competitor, and also that the number of solutions available on the market that allows you to tap into those into this raw information and process it and load it into enterprise data warehouse. So the next stage that we see is that some organizations, they might offload processing required to populate data warehouse. So because in many cases this process can be fairly expensive and require lots of resources, but at the same time it doesn't happen 24/7. It's only once a week or once a month, once a quarter. So some organizations rely on cloud infrastructures to start a cluster, Spark Roll cluster or Hadoop cluster, process enormous amount of information, build aggregates, build roll-ups, and load them into data warehouse for analysts to use. So that's sort of like a second question, a second stage. And what is important specifically in this discussion is sort of like an offload of analytical engine, which does include storage and does include processing engine, as well as some visualization and business intelligence tier. And that's where, again, Google BigQuery come to play nicely. And I'll probably let Chad to take it from here.
Thanks. When we talk about what opportunities are presented by moving companies moving their data into the cloud, I just wanted to go through a couple ones that really popped to mind, specifically as they relate to BigQuery. So specifically, BigQuery has a serverless architecture. So customers can bring in and scale up almost arbitrarily, not quite, but almost arbitrarily large repositories of data and repositories of query, for example. BigQuery can handle gigabytes on Tuesday, scale to terabytes on the Wednesday, and perhaps petabytes on the Thursday. And you don't need to provision any machines. You don't need to go ahead and define whether you're going to use a small, large, or medium instance. You just submit your work, submit your data, and BigQuery takes care of the scaling. And so that makes this platform particularly elastic. Google BigQuery is also fully managed, and that means that customers don't need to worry about georeplications, backups, security. Google BigQuery is encrypted both at rest and in flight. Customers also don't need to worry about making upgrades to their software. Google just takes care of that for them. And when you speak also of particular benefits, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but when you talk about federated data sources, so this is the ability to query your own data, like perhaps sales receipts, for example, and couple that with data from some other, perhaps even external to your organization's source. For example, Walmart some years ago did an example of, it was one of the first examples of big data insights, and they correlated their sales receipts from stores ahead of weather fronts from hurricanes, and they found out what products seemed to sell best when folks were fleeing hurricanes. And the answer to that was the top two products were beer and strawberry Pop-Tarts. And the Pop-Tarts was perhaps a bit of a surprise, but it makes sense, right? Folks are a little bit nervous, they seek comfort, and I can tell you if I was fleeing a hurricane, I don't know if I'd want a Pop-Tart, but I'd certainly want a beer. But that said, the ability for an organization like Walmart to look ahead and look at weather data coupled with sales receipts is something that more and more companies should be able to do, and it's one of the things we've been paying a lot to within Google Cloud's platform. And so there are currently available public data sets that companies can query in conjunction with their own.
But also in addition to that, I know that there are some specifics in terms of how processing power is allocated to users and how it's being built. So can you comment on that as well?
Sure. The way Google BigQuery allocates processing power, that can happen in a couple different ways. First of all, if somebody comes to the platform, signs up, puts some data in, and starts using it, they get a quota of 2,000 slots on a best effort basis. And a slot is a unit of compute and networking and the memory to run the compute side. And it's how we measure compute resources within BigQuery. And so that 2,000 slots is our basic unit for anybody coming to the query, coming to BigQuery. If you're a larger customer and you want to, you want a dedicated resource, you can actually contact us, and we can allocate more compute resources, and that goes at a very, very well-defined and linear scale of cost. And I think, Vladimir, did you have anything else that you wanted to point out there, or did I cover what you were pointing at?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to clarify that the way BigQuery charges is per usage per terabyte processor, so you don't really need to keep resources allocated. You only use and pay for what is required.
Yeah, and that applies in the storage as well. You don't need to spin up, if you want to keep 750 terabytes, you don't have to spin up a 1 petabyte instance. You just load your data and you're charged for what you utilize.
Yeah, and that's a huge benefit.
Great points, and thanks for that clarification regarding offload and that wonderful Walmart example. I would have never thought beer and Pop-Tarts, especially strawberry Pop-Tarts. Did you say strawberry?
I believe, I'm not 100% sure I remember the detail of the flavor correctly, but I'm pretty sure it was strawberry.
Okay.
All those raspberry lovers out there are, I'm sure, really upset about that, but I think strawberry took the day.